guys, my name's Lisa.
And I'm Brittany.
And I'm Tara.
And this is the Imperfect Moms Club. Each week, we promise to give you the honest truth about all things mommyhood, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the real ugly. All right, well, let's talk childbirth. Because that's a fun topic. I mean, it is fun. It's good, babies coming into the world, but it can also be messy.
It can be very messy. I was talking to my husband before we came down to record, and he's like, I don't have to listen to this one, do I? Like this episode? I'm like, no, it's good. Like he wasn't one of those dads who was like down there, like with the camera and like all excited. He just stayed way up on my shoulder and just kind of looked at the ceiling and wasn't very excited to be there.
I had a C-section, so I know zero about like vaginal childbirth. Like I know nothing. So so what about you guys? Were they C-sections or
Both of mine were vaginal, but they were both different, like in their own way. Yeah.
I'm sure. I mean, there's, people that have vaginal deliveries, like they all have different things that happen and stuff. So I'm sure that everybody's story is different. But yeah, I know like zero. So I'm really hoping that like with this one that's like about to come out, hopefully soon, I hope, please. Hopefully, I'm hoping for a VBAC is what they keep telling me, that I'm like fine and I can do it. I don't want any surprises. I mean, I know that childbirth it's the kind of thing where like crap happens and then you just have to like deal with things in the moment. And so people that have birth plans, I mean, sometimes your birth plan kind of has to go out the window. Like, I mean, mine did. I wasn't expecting a C-section at all. So we actually, my husband and I, we had a scheduled, childbirth class to go to, but I couldn't go. So we just watched a YouTube video.
I did that too.
Yeah. They offered a class at the hospital that was like for like C-sections. And I was like, I don't need that. I was like, I'll be fine. And then, lo and behold, I was like, well, crap, now I have no idea what's happening. And like, I don't know what's going on. So yeah.
I had a unplanned C-section as well.
Okay.
After like 12 hours of terrible labor.
Oh,
I labored for 12 hours too.
Yeah. My epidural failed, and
oh no.
it basically got like kind of lodged sideways in my pelvis.
Oh no.
It was terrible. And yeah, I was like basically begging for the C-section by the time we
yeah, just get her out. Yeah.
I didn't even watch a YouTube video. I was just like, I'm a nurse, I'm just gonna wing this.
You have no idea, like you don't realize it's like a major surgery until
definitely.
You don't, because you're just like, oh, it's just another way to deliver a baby and it's just another birth. No. It is a major surgery.
Aren't they like basically, because I've seen scars. I've never had one, but I've seen scars. They cut you open, and then aren't they basically like taking everything out, like all of your organs? Yeah. Like, or is that just like some horror story I'm hearing?
They like, cut through a lot of stuff. So I actually watched, I don't know why I did this, but I was curious because I mean, obviously you're on the table, so you can't like see what they're doing. So it was on Instagram actually. Like there was somebody had like a computerized like just what a C-section is and stuff, and I was like, oh my god, they cut through a lot of stuff. Like I looked at it and I was like, they did that to me. Like, so they basically like, yeah, they like cut you in half.
Oh my goodness.
It was interesting to watch and then like never watch again. And then I tried to like tell my husband, he was like, yeah, we don't need to get really nitty-gritty about details. Just, she's here, she's healthy, like,
When I was in nursing school, I watched a C-section, and it was honestly sort of terrifying. Like They basically, made the cut, but then they have a doctor on each side and they basically rip because you heal better that way than you do through like an incision. I just was like terrified about that when I was just like, oh my gosh, I never want this to happen to me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
pregnancy is such a roller coaster because, at the beginning, maybe you're trying to get pregnant and then you do, and you're all like, woo, this is great. And then you start looking at all the plans and you're like, oh my word, she's going to come out of where? It's going to do what? And then once you get to like the last week, you're like, I'm done. Get her out now. You're just like all over the place emotionally. You don't know what you want. You don't know what you don't want. Just, you want relief.
Yeah.
I'll be 30 weeks tomorrow and I'm already like, is it go time yet? Like, are we doing this now? Can we do this now? Can we speed this up? And I can't breathe and like all this stuff. And like, I've started having Braxton Hicks all the time. And so I'm having these contractions. And the terrible part about that is like because I'm preterm, like they want you to like go into the labor and delivery to like make sure that you're not actually giving birth. But like I have a toddler, so my I went into the hospital yesterday with contractions and it ended up being fine, but my husband was like, we can't keep doing this. Like the first time when I was pregnant with Lily, I started having like some preterm contractions kind of or Braxton Hicks a lot of the time. And so I ended up on bed rest, but we like didn't have a toddler to like, like logistically it wasn't that hard. But now like he was like, so if you have to do that again, just like tell them to keep you there because it's just easier. Like I'm like, can I just live at labor and delivery? Like, can I just live here? Like, I mean, I don't, because I mean, right now I'm basically like, the doctor didn't say bed rest, but I'm basically like, I can't do anything. Like I'm super out of breath and I can't, so I've been in bed all day. Like I can't, I'm really, really itching to, go through birth and stuff. I'm also terrified because, I didn't have vaginal delivery and like I'm trying to have one. And for some reason, I'm more nervous this time than I even was last time. Like last time I was more like, oh yeah, like I'll just, labor and then childbirth. And I mean, we're women can do anything. And, and like we can, but then like now, because I had a C-section and because I like my cervix just stopped, like I just stopped dilating after 4 centimeters. And so there's that fear in my head that I just can't, and so now I'm like paralyzed because I'm like, oh my God, like what if I, because C-sections they're rough. That recovery though, Tara, I'm sure you can attest to that. It's just like, oh man, yeah, C-section recovery is a beast. I mean, when I was in the hospital, I would get up to go to the bathroom and I'd have to like hang out hunched over for 2 minutes because I was scared that everything was just going to come right out of me and like the pain. And so my husband was like, oh my God, are you okay? And I was like, just give me a minute. Just give me a minute to convince myself that my organs are going to stay put. It's really a huge thing. And you don't realize it's major surgery until, yeah, like I said, until you go through it. And then you're like, well, damn. They just, they cut me in half. And I guess I had major surgery. And it's scary too. Like I cried the entire time.
Oh,
the entire
that's
time.
So emotional.
Every picture of me, just I have like the puffy like red, they have the sheet too, so you just see like my face surrounded with like pillows and then the sheet and stuff, and I'm just like bawling. Because it's scary, like, so thank goodness they'd given me the epidural before, because then they just had to like up the epidural. I was scared of the epidural too. I kept telling the nurse, because she kept coming in and she noticed that I was in a lot of pain, right? Because contractions hurt a lot. And so I kept telling her, I was like, no, I'm fine. Just like, just give me more IV meds. Like, we're good. And so she kept giving me the IV meds because I was scared. I was like, I don't want that thing going in my spine. Like, I don't want that thing anywhere near my spine, like I was really scared. And finally, the pain, like I was like, okay, fine. It didn't hurt me, like they were really, really good at it. So I was like, I cried afterwards because I was so relieved because I was like, oh my God, I was so scared of this thing. And like, epidurals are magical.
So magical.
They're magical. I forgot I was in labor. I was just like hanging out in the hospital and I was like, hey, like everything's fine. Like, woo, you know. And so, but like, yeah, thank goodness I had gotten the epidural before, because I think that if they'd said C-section, I was already freaking out and I would have been scared of the epidural and it just would have been like a big mess mentally. So I'm glad that I had that, because then all they had to do was kind of make it stronger for the C-section.
My epidural had failed, and so then they had to put it in, and then they had to put it in like while I was like mid contraction, and so
Oh,
I held super still, and oh gosh, it was rough. But it's a good thing, like your brain must block some of that out at some point, because otherwise I don't understand how anyone would have kids again.
Yeah, those hormones though. Yeah, I you forget, like the baby comes out
Yeah.
and you just like forget everything. And so like I was like, it was 3 months after Lily was born and I was like, let's make another one. And Paul, my husband Paul, was like, Lisa, listen to yourself. Like, you don't understand what you're saying. And so like, yeah, it just yeah, I don't think women would have number 2 if they like remembered everything. Because
Yeah.
there were things that I forgot, and you know, I would tell Paul stuff and he's like, you said the same thing the first time. And I was like, did I really? Was it really this rough? I feel like this one's harder. And he's like, nope. This is par for the course, lady. I have some questions about natural delivery actually, because I wrote some down, because I'm like gonna have one hopefully in 10 weeks, and so I'm like trying to so what is the recovery like for Brittany? What's like the recovery like?
okay.
for-
So my first vaginal birth was harder than my second one because I didn't know what I was doing. And I
Okay.
wanted to get her out so bad that I didn't really listen to my doctors and my nurses when they were like telling me to push. I was just like, no, she's coming now. And I was just like, push, 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 push. But you're supposed to like push with the contraction. And I was like, no, it's good. It's good. I can push now. So by pushing so hard, I tore really bad,
Oh no.
really badly. And it was so painful. And there's a funny story that goes along with that. So she came out and I tore, and there was just there's gonna be blood anyway, but there was like a lot of blood because I
Oh
tore.
no.
And so she comes out and they clean her up and they check her. And they put her on my chest, and I look up at my husband who's up at my shoulder, and he's got like one hand on her, and then he's looking up at the ceiling and he's just crying. And I'm like, oh my word, he's so touched, you know, by the birth of our child. He's so moved. And this is just like so great. And we're parents and just, you know, butterflies, and it's wonderful. And then a few weeks later, I told him, I'm like, I saw you. He's like, what? I'm like, I saw you crying when she came out. He's like, there was so much blood. I was trying not to pass out. And I was just like so grossed out. And that's why he was crying. Yeah. So it took them an hour to stitch me back. And it could have been because it was so badly torn. Also, it was a teaching hospital. So they had a student stitch me back together, and
Oh no.
I was on so many painkillers. I was just like, whatever, I don't care. I kind of felt a little bit, but not a lot. So I just laid there with my baby on my chest for an hour, and I was like, are you done yet? Like, it's taking a long time. I could sew a dress, you know, in this amount of time. Yeah, and so then getting up and walking around was awful. I mean, I walked like I was 100-year-old woman because it was just so bad. Yeah, and then with Molly, I just knew what I was doing, and I just took it a little bit slower, and I pushed when they told me to push, and I listened, and I didn't tear at all, and I was almost ready to like get up and run a mile after I had her. It was like such a difference. Yeah, it was so weird. I was like, why do I feel this good? Like, this is really strange. Yeah, and I got an epidural with both of them. With Clara, she was like she was not turned upside down, but she was like facing the wrong direction. Like her head was the wrong way, or like she was looking down and she was supposed to be looking up or something. So I had back labor. And so they had to like put me in this funky position with like my leg up for a couple hours to try and turn her. She finally turned, and the epidural helped just enough so like it took that edge off of it.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave me a button, and they're like, every time this button turns green, you can push the button and it'll give you a little extra boost of epidural. And I was like,
More
okay.
drugs.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And so, but I was shaking so hard because my body was just working so hard. And I gave the button to my husband, and I was like, okay, listen, every time this button turns green, you push it. And he's like, okay. So I had my eyes closed for most of it because I was just in pain. And every now and then he'd be like, you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. Cause I'm trying to be tough, like, yeah, I'm good. He's like, okay. I need to wait a little while. You okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm good. He's like, okay. And then later on, I found out he never pushed the freaking button because he's like, you said you're okay. I told you to push the button. On our way to the hospital with the second one, I was like, if I tell you to push that button, you push it. He's like, okay. I'm in pain. Yeah, but with Molly, I waited and waited and waited for the epidural because they're like, the longer you wait, the faster she'll come and all this stuff. So I'm like, okay, great. So I waited and I got my epidural, and then 10 minutes later, she was on the table. And I was like, really? I only got a 10-minute break.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but just listen to your doctors, listen to your nurses. If they say slow down, please slow down because they know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And just do it feels natural. Like the first round, I was like, oh, well, I'm supposed to be up and walking around, and oh, I'm supposed to be bouncing on a ball. That's what everyone does. And I did it, but I don't think it really helped me. It didn't feel like I needed to do it, So the second round, I felt more like, oh, I need to be rocking back and forth. That will help me right now. Or I need Mike to push me, on my back. It's like I just went with what my body was telling me to do, and it just went so much smoother. So yeah.
Like what you're hearing so far? Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you, and we really love sharing with you guys. Now back to the show.
So I feel really silly asking this question, and I apologize to the listeners, but I just have to ask it. Do you like poop?
Oh my word. Okay. So it will probably happen, and it's okay. Tara can probably attest that, like, to the professional medical community, it's not a big deal. They're just like, oh, whatever, and they just take care of it. But yeah,
I'm like, because it's so funny because like shame should go out the window, but like I'm still the person that like will put my panties under my clothes when I go in to go into the OB or whatever. Like I'm just, I don't know. So I feel like that would be like really mortifying for me.
Well, when you're in the moment, you don't really care. When you're in the moment, after the fact, you're like at your house, you're making your cup of coffee, and you're like, oh my word, did that happen? And then it kind of hits.
Yeah.
It is kind of like a natural thing, and I feel like if you just kind of accept it, and your nurses won't think anything of it.
Yeah.
And I will say, going to the bathroom those first 3 days or 4 days after giving birth, like, it is quite the nail biter because you're sitting there and you're like, am I going to push out all my organs? Am I, especially if like how I tore so bad that first time, I was so scared to push. I thought I was going to pop a seam or something, and I didn't, but it's a process. It is a recovery.
I'm so anxious about it just because, I think it is because I had a C-section the first time, and so a lot of that, like I had postpartum depression, and I have anxiety anyway, and so like for a long time it kind of felt like I didn't give birth to her, like it felt like they gave birth to her for me, and so like that really that kind of killed me, thinking that I'm better now. I'm over it now. It's just this time I'm like, well, what if I again can't do it? And it's just like that's the most anxious part. Like I feel like a nervous wreck. Just because I'm like, what if I can't do it? And and my I went through a lot of like, oh, my body failed me, and like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with my body? And then come to find out, like, just by talking to my new OB, it didn't necessarily have to happen the way it did. And so, I mean, different OBs have different, they all have different views on things, but knowing that, I felt less like my body failed me, and more like, I could have done it. Like, so that made me feel a little bit better. Maybe I would have been able to, had we waited longer or whatever. Another thing I didn't really get to experience that I'd like to ask about is, so did both of you like just go into labor naturally? Because I didn't.
At 41 weeks and 1 day, I was induced.
Oh.
And then she was born on my birthday.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I didn't, so they wanted to induce me because I had high water, and so at 37 weeks they induced me, and so I got to the hospital, and I was fine. I felt fine. I didn't go into labor, like my water didn't break. Like I'm just like, yeah, okay, like I guess I'm having a baby tomorrow. So I don't know what that's like either. So what is that like? Like, because I'm anxious too. I'm like, is my water gonna break? Am I just gonna feel contractions? Like, what's gonna happen? Like, where do I want to be if my water breaks? Like, I don't know. Just all these thoughts. Like, I'm like, am I gonna be in public? Like, because that seems mortifying, but at the same time, like, I don't have to clean it up if that happens.
My mom always said, if you're pregnant and you're going out grocery shopping, you always get a jar of pickles. So if you break your water, you just drop the jar of pickles, and that's like your cover,
Oh.
And you're like, oh, it's the pickles. I gotta go. And you just leave. I never did that. With Clara, I had back labor at night, and I was sure she was coming. I was like, okay, this is it. These are contractions. She's gonna be here. And then they just like kind of stopped. And so I was like, what? Kind of mad. So the next morning I was just kind of laying on the couch, just mad that I hadn't had her yet. And I was like, well, I'm just gonna get up and clean my house. Like, I was just whatever. And so I stood up, and then I took my rag and I was running it under the sink, and all of a sudden I felt the water, like my water broke, and I looked down and I was like, oh, like I had been so anxious waiting for this moment, and now that was here, I was like, what do I do? Okay, I have a bag. Okay, I need to call my husband because he was teaching. Like, I called him and I was like, okay, because he was in the middle of teaching a history class, and I'm like, listen, you don't need to run over here. It's okay, but my water just broke. So finish teaching your 9 o'clock and then come home and get me. And he's like, okay, okay. So I don't know if the kids learned anything that hour. I think he was probably just really anxious too. But yeah, it's not like you're peeing and you can control it. It just comes out and you're just there and you're like, okay. So
they broke my water, and I was like, what? This is, it just wouldn't stop. Like, I was like, oh my God. All of a sudden I was like sitting in a pool and I was like, what's happening right now? And so like, I was like, I can't imagine being anywhere other than a hospital bed right now. Because like, I'm so glad that I was like in the hospital when my water broke, because I was like, oh my God, there's so like, it's not stopping. I was like, this is ridiculous. Like, this is crazy. Like,
when mine broke, I basically just went and I sat on the toilet while I called my doctor, because it was just coming out. Like, it just wouldn't stop. And then, so she's like, yeah, you need to come in, you're ready and all that. And then I think I went through like 3 or 4 pads before my husband showed up. And then I put another pad on, and then I put 2 towels down on the car, because I was just, I didn't know how much it was going to, how much was going to come out. But yeah, it's more than you think. It's not like in the movies where it's like this huge gush of water, it's not like a gallon of water coming out. It's just, I don't know. It's hard to explain.
So if your water breaks, like, is that like I mean, so contractions, like when they start, you can kind of like wait, but like when, if your water breaks, like maybe Tara, you can answer this because you're a nurse, but like, do you need to like get to the hospital right away? Like, is that a thing that you probably shouldn't like wait too long or?
I think there is a time frame. I mean, I'm not an OB nurse, but I think there is a time frame into which you are supposed to be to the hospital, but I don't think it's like immediate.
Okay.
But like your, first sign that you should be heading that way.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm just like, oh, we'll see. It's kind of a sad thing that I didn't get to experience that. Like that was one of the things that really made me like depressed and anxious too with Lily was that I feel like a lot of experiences were kind of taken from me. Like I feel like, the going into labor naturally, I didn't get to experience that, and I didn't really get to experience obviously vaginal delivery. I didn't get to experience that because, but then also because of all the meds that they gave me for the C-section, like anxiety meds and all of that, like I just kind of I was out. Like I passed out right after. So I also didn't get to experience like having her like brand new, being able to have her on my chest and all that stuff. So I'm just I don't know. I'm nervous about it. We'll see. And so like what is I guess right after the birth? I know that like they put the baby on your chest, but like what do they have to do?
Yeah, so you get the baby out, and then they cut the cord and they check the baby and all that. And then you normally give birth again to the placenta fairly quickly afterwards. And I wasn't super interested in seeing mine or touching it or turning it into capsules or anything like that. But I gave birth in Vermont when they are very crunchy. I'm like a little bit crunchy. I'm not, but they're super crunchy. And so they're like, do you want to see the placenta? I'm like, no, I'm good. Like, I'm good. I got the baby. Like, that's all I want.
Yeah.
Some people do like art pieces. Like, I'm not into that, but okay. Yeah, so you give birth to the placenta, and then basically they just like check on you and make sure, at least for me, they just checked and like I tore, so they had to fix me up a little bit. Just making sure you gave like all of it came out. They don't want any of the placenta left in there. You need to have all of it out. And then of course, if you've had your epidural, they want to make sure you can walk. And then if I remember correctly, I don't think I was allowed to leave the birthing room until I could get up and go to the bathroom, and they had to check the toilet for some reason. I can't remember why. I had to like pee a certain amount or something. And then after I could get up and walk to the bathroom and go to the bathroom, then they moved me to whatever the next room was. Like I can't remember what it was called. Yeah. And then I ate a whole pizza and it was glorious.
Nice. Yeah, my celebratory meal was steak and lobster.
Yeah, that's what I had too.
It was so great because I like just my two favorite foods just together, and the two foods that I like couldn't have for 9 months. So I was like, this is amazing, and I just want to rub my face all in it. But yeah, so yeah, I guess like after my C-section, they just kind of like wheeled me to the room, and then I just was like in the bed and I couldn't really like move. I didn't really wake up until like the next day, but so I don't know, Tara, were you like awake afterward? Did they do like, were you able to, or did they try to get you to walk around or anything?
Well, with my spinal block, I had like no control of my legs at all. Like they were just dead weight. So it took a long time for that to wear off. Probably like, I don't know, 6-ish hours maybe for that to wear off. But I mean, mentally, I was perfectly awake through all of it. So that was nice. And it's very interesting because I gave birth, or I had my daughter in the hospital that I work in.
Oh.
And so I like knew everyone there, but which is like a blessing, and then sometimes not, because then you have like, like the housekeeping staff coming in and wanted to like talk, and I'm like, I don't want to talk to you right now. Like, I'll see you in 3 months when I come back to work. But
Yeah.
I like chatting.
Yeah, I was out. So as far as like having her on me, I didn't really know. But like they put Charlotte on your chest and everything, and you were able to. Yeah. Yeah, I had to live that through photos, because I like every single one of the pictures of like me with Lily on me, I'm just asleep. So I posted like one where like there's reasonable deniability, like where people can like, because I was like, I don't want people to think that I'm just like, I don't care about this bit. I'm just so I was like, there's one where I'm like, you can't really see my face that well, because I'm like, I'm kind of, my face is like angled down, so it looks like I'm looking at her, but yeah, no, I'm completely asleep. And so yeah, it was interesting. It was just an interesting experience. So I'm excited to see what happens with this one. And I'll be sure to like let you guys know. I'm just like, ooh, like it's like 10 weeks away, and I'm like, I wish it was tomorrow. Like I just want this baby. Like, I don't know. I feel like maybe Brittany, you can attest to this, because you also had two, but like I feel like this time I'm more interested in like her being here than I am in like the pregnancy, because I already like, it's not new, like this, the process isn't like a new thing to me, so I don't feel necessarily as like excited about like the pregnancy. Like, I just want my baby.
Yeah, I just remember getting, really excited to have another little girl, and finally my other daughter to have a sister, and making the whole nursery. And yeah, it was just, I didn't have to be bedridden at all, but it was just so painful. Like, I ended up in the bathtub like 3 times a night, just sitting there in the water, because I got what's it called? I got hemorrhoids, and they hurt so bad. And I remember just sitting in the tub, just rocking back and forth, and I was just a lot of back pain, and you're pregnant, you're miserable, achiness, and I was just done. Every time I'd go in to get checked, I think it was you start going in like every other week, then you start going in every week or whatever it is. I would just look at the doctor as soon as she walked in the room, and she'd be like, "No, Brittany, I don't have a magic pill to give you to make you go into labor." And I'm like, please, please. And then she did what's it called when they a swipe, they like swipe your cervix, or they sweep the membrane, I think. Is that what it's? Yes. So she did that because I think she was just tired of seeing me look at her with big puppy eyes. She's like, I got to give this girl something. So I remember I was laying down on the bed. I was holding my mom's hand. My mom was there, and I was like, okay, I'm going to pick a spot on the ceiling. I'm just going to stare at it, and I'll be fine. And she started this membrane sweep, and I just shut my eyes and I squeezed my mom's hand so hard. And I was like, oh, it hurts so bad. Oh, no. And she's like, do you want me to stop? I'm like, no, keep going. I didn't do anything.
Anything to get her. Yeah.
Didn't do anything to me either. It was uncomfortable.
I didn't get that, because they I was like 1,000% not, like, my body was not ready to have a baby, so like none of that. I didn't get that at all. They didn't do my membranes. Like, I mean, they checked me, but like I was not, like, I was very, very high up, and like I was completely closed, and so like there was no, I don't know. So it was just kind of a crazy thing. So we'll see what happens. And I'm like, I'm super excited and nervous, and I can't wait to share with you guys.
Thank you all so much for joining us this week on the Imperfect Moms Club. If you liked what you heard, please be sure to visit our website, theimperfectmomsclub.buzzsprout.com, where you'll be able to subscribe as well as find links to our social media accounts and a list of our episodes. We would also love hearing from you, so feel free to leave us comments on social media or suggestions for future discussion topics. We want this podcast to be as relatable and accessible as possible, so your input would be greatly appreciated.